Hey friends, it's your pal Mike Shea from Sly Flourish here with another episode of the Lazy D&D Talk Show. In this weekly show, we talk about all things D&D. This show is brought to you by the patrons of Sly Flourish. If you want to help support Sly Flourish, help support shows like this, you can do so by going to patreon.com/slyflourish and signing up. The link to the Patreon is in the show notes below. Patrons get access to all kinds of exclusive material, exclusive guidelines and tips and tricks and other things, including adventures and all sorts of stuff. But most of all, they help me put on shows like this. So to the patrons of Sly Flourish, thank you so much for your support. I have some interesting things to talk about today. Number one, biggest deal, at least for me, is that the lazydm's Companion PDF has been released to backers. So if you were a backer of the lazydm Companion Kickstarter, which happened last October, the PDF for that has now been delivered. I sent out the PDF to all backers through BackerKit, I think Tuesday, and many people got it. That includes the PDF of the lazydm's Companion, fully edited with all the maps, all the art, everything is in it. And the map pack and an art pack, kind of a secret art pack. Yeah, all the art is available in the art pack as well. So you can download both of those. If you are a backer, you can download them directly from BackerKit. You also get a link to add it to your drive-through RPG library, so that if you already have a drive-through RPG library and you want it added to that library, there's a link, you click that, it adds it right to your cart for $0. You check out, and it's now added to your library as well. So that is really exciting. Here it is, right here, the lazydm's Companion, 64 pages. I think it's 65-page PDF because of the cover, and it's got all this stuff in it. Everything is here, all these different tools, so many tools, all clickable. If you want to go to Alien World, you go straight to the Alien World. And just, oh man, I'm so happy. I'm so happy it's out. The feedback has been great. People have been really liking it. Look at that God. Look at the God generator. God. Right? Great stuff. Just it's packed with tools to help you run 5e games. Both to help you come up with ideas for your own adventures, help fill in parts of your own campaign, and give you tools to help streamline playing 5e. All in one book. A 64-page book. Bunch of different maps. Let's take a look at those maps, right? Let's look at those maps. Here, I'm going to do them in reverse order. Here are some general purpose cavern maps and worked stone. So we have natural stone and worked stone maps. You can take these, turn them left and right, flip them horizontally, flip them vertically, use them for lots of different things, seal off different rooms, use them for all different kinds of purposes. The idea behind these was that you can use each of these maps for many different things instead of just one. Here's an underground point crawl map. By Chloe Ballard did this. Excellent, beautiful way of showing what a really nice point crawl map can be like. Hey, Matt Morrow is here. Matt Morrow, I was just looking at your art. We'll look at more of your art here in a second. Here is another point crawl map. This is an overland one. It looks kind of like a geographical map, but actually it's a point crawl map. And if you look, you can see like all the connectors, like streams and roads and valleys and little aqueducts and all kinds of things. And hey, look, giant skulls. It's one of my favorite things. This is by Saga McKenzie. This is the tavern map, 3-layer tavern map that you can use for all kinds of different things. You can just use it as a tavern. You could use it for an infiltration mission. You could just use the basement for some crazy dungeon. You can use it for lots of different things. And here is Saga McKenzie Manor map. So same kind of thing. You could use it. It could be the player's home base. It could be something that they have to go infiltrate. Lots of different ways to use it. Maybe they just go to a party. Right? Maybe they're just having a dinner party and you want a map for a dinner party. You got that. The town map by Daniel Walthall, general purpose town map with lots of interesting little places that you can go explore. And the final general purpose dungeon map that includes both dungeons of worked stone and natural stone. Again, you can use it lots of ways. Seal off doors, remove different caverns, use it for stuff like that. And we even use it in an adventure called the Dungeon of Shadows, a 2-page adventure that's in the end of the book that shows how you can kind of combine the material together that's in the rest of this book to build an adventure. And here it is. But Matt Morrow's here. Let's look at some of Matt's art. So that is the relic piece, right? Skeletal hand with a weird Cthulhu idol in it. I think that's awesome. This is one of my favorites. Matt did this very early on, and I used it for lots of previews and stuff like that because it's so cool. Big floating obelisk over a big pit. Really cool, right? I love that sort of stuff. Protect the village, right? Here's a normal village with a bunch of stakes around the outside. Neat stuff. Where else do we have some? There's so many great things in here. There's a ancient ziggurat. This is right for your lost kingdoms. If you ever need to fill in old places and you're like, I need some background for this. Well, this is what gives you some background on developing old kingdoms, old civilizations and societies that have become lost over time. And there's a cool step pyramid. I still love this one. This is, Matt, I think this is the last piece you did, right? And man, it's just awesome. So great. I have to ask, Matt, were you influenced at all by the movie The Ritual? Because it looks like The Ritual. If you haven't seen The Ritual, that movie is badass, and I highly recommend it. So really dig that one. Great stuff, right? Each just trying to grab your imagination a bit and run off with it. I like this one, giant sarcophagus, right? Big ancient carved pillars, and there's little adventurers, and you can see, wow, that sarcophagus is really big. What's in there? Is it a stone giant lich? No, you haven't seen it. Matt Moreau, check out, if you like horror movies, check out The Ritual. Here is a ancient elven archway in the wilderness exploration, things you can find in the wilderness. Undead templates, monster templates. You want to take your monster manual and multiply it by 5 to 10 times? 2 pages that help you do that. This is I wonder if anybody knows the secret of this. So we have 2 pieces of art here. Here is an undead dragonborn knight. And then here is a woman paladin with her blade and everything like that. There's a secret bit of lore behind that. I wonder if anybody will recognize a little bit of lore that's connected to from previous Sly Flourish work. Here is your wilderness travel, right? Like old ruined things. There's the big statue of a face out there. Here's an aqueduct for point crawls, right? That you saw the aqueduct that was inside the Chloe Ballard map. Yeah. There is a picture of that actual aqueduct to show how things get connected. We are looking at the LazyDM's Companion, the final version of the LazyDM's Companion, my 3rd book of the Return to the Lazy Dungeon Master series. Halloween Grendelwood Adventure. Close? Not quite. You're close, though. One of those words is correct. Well, yeah, one of those words is correct. We have secrets and clues, cool little scroll, all kinds of stuff. The Gothic Castle. Give me something that's a mixture of Ravenloft and Castlevania. Bang, there it is. And what else? Check the Session 0 checklist, all the stuff you need to play it. And what else? Tools for improv. And their introduction. So that there was the whole thing in reverse. So LazyDM's Companion is released. I'm super excited about it. I'm very, very happy. And it will be available for general sale. Well, there's a couple things you could do. If you want it right now, you can go to BackerKit and buy it, and you will get access to it right away. You'll get the PDF right away. So if you did not back it, you can pre-order it. You can go to the pre-order page on BackerKit and order it, and you'll get the PDF. Even if you just order the PDF, you'll basically get exactly what you wanted. It will be available for general sale on DriveThruRPG a week from this Tuesday, I think. I don't think I'm going to launch it Tuesday. I don't know, maybe. We'll see what I'm doing tomorrow. But I want to do a big, full court press release. So I might do it tomorrow, but it might be a week before. I don't know. Let's see. I got to think about that. But yeah, you could pick it up. $10 for the PDF. Download it. $10 gets you the PDF and the map pack all together. All the PDF, art, and map pack all together in one big bundle. And you can get it through Drive. If you order it on BackerKit, you'll still get it on DriveThruRPG. So if you want it right away, if you're watching this video and you're like, I don't want to wait and I want it on DriveThruRPG, you can do it. Go to BackerKit. I think it's like Sly Flourish. Let's see. If you go to Sly Flourish, right, and you click on LazyDM's Companion, and you can see this pre-order print copies through BackerKit, and you click that. I wonder where that goes. You can click the pre-order one, and you don't have to get the $25 one. You can just get the PDF. Let's try it. Let's see what happens. I guess. Oh, I'm sorry. No, yeah, you can go down here, right? And LazyDM's Companion, $10 PDF and VTT. You click that, you pre-order it, but as soon as you finish your order, it's going to say, here it is, right? And it's going to give you the link to DriveThruRPG, so you can order it directly there. So that's all great. But it will be up for general sale on DriveThruRPG either this Tuesday or next Tuesday. We're gonna have to see. Well, because I got to do a bunch of stuff ahead of time, but I might have time tomorrow, so we'll find out. So if you like what you just saw, check it out. And that is the LazyDM's Companion. We're going to talk a lot about Monsters of the Multiverse today because there's lots of interesting news, weird news, strange news, things, and a lot of previews of the monsters that are in Monsters of the Multiverse. So the first piece of news that came out is that Monsters of the Multiverse is going to be available on D&D Beyond on 17 May. The Monsters of the Multiverse hardcover book is available as part of a gift pack next week, this coming week, right? And that is the only way to get it, is to buy it in a gift pack that includes Tasha's Cauldron of Everything and Xanathar's Guide to Everything. And if you already have those books, you're like, well, do I have to buy those books again? The answer is you'd have to buy those books again to get Monsters of the Multiverse early. I was going to, and then I saw the previews. I said, I'm not seeing changes that are so substantive to me and so much better to me than what I already have, that it's worth buying 2 other books that I already have. So I decided against it, and particularly because, and it's weird, right? And I preach against this, and then yet it affected me. Because they're not available in D&D Beyond right away, having the physical book isn't really that useful to me. There's no digital version of those monsters that I can use. And that makes it less useful to me. So I still buy physical books, even though I tend to use the digital versions more often. And I plan to do so with Monsters of the Multiverse in May. But I'm not willing to pay the extra fee of having to buy 2 other books that I already have. And I don't want to give away my old, like one option where I buy the new ones and then I give away my old ones or something. But I have the special edition covers of the old ones. I'm not going to get rid of those either. Those are, they're part of my collection. So I don't, so I just decided against pre-ordering the physical book. And I'm more bothered by the fact that they are putting out this gift set like 4 months, 5 months early, right? 5 months. Like, it'd be one thing if it was a month, right? Or it'd be one thing if it was like 3 weeks at your local game shop. But 5 months for this book to be out, but you can only get it as part of this one thing, right? That seems like a long time. And that bothers me. I can't think of any good reason why that book should only be available in the pack, in the gift pack. That isn't just, we want to siphon money out of people, right? There's a good reason to have a gift pack. And that's the idea that you have the gift box of the core books, which has all 3 core books in it. And then you have the gift box of this next set. And those 2 are like the advanced D&D set, right? You have your pure core book D&D set, Monster Manual, Dungeon Master's Guide, Player's Handbook. And then you have Xanathar's Guide, Tasha's Guide, and Monsters of the Multiverse. Lots of new monsters, lots of new races, and lots of new class options. And you put those 6 books together, you have a ton of D&D, right? There's a ton of D&D. And if somebody was just getting started and they're willing to drop the, whatever it is, $250, wherever, plus Amazon, discounts, right? That's a lot of D&D. That's enough D&D to play forever, right? Well, not forever, but a long time, many, many years with 6 books. So having a gift set really makes sense. Only having Monsters of the Multiverse in the gift set, to me, there's no good reason for it other than it's a cash grab, in my opinion. So that was an interesting thing, because I kind of expected that they would be on D&D Beyond earlier. And no, they're not. They're not going to be on D&D Beyond until May, which means even if you own those books, that material is not going to be on Beyond until May, right? That's a long time to wait. So then another announcement came out. There were a few different announcements that came out about this, but this came from a discussion on the D&D Beyond Twitch show from the developers of D&D Beyond. So this is directly from them. And it was a surprise to me. This goes to show you that experts are terrible at predictions. I predicted differently, and I was wrong, right? I was dead wrong about this. I expected that they were going to update the races and monsters that had been already published in Volo's Guide and from Volo's Guide to Monsters and Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. I expected that the races and the monsters in those books would be updated with the new stuff from Mordenkainen or from Monsters of the Multiverse, because I'm like, they're the updated ones, right? And the answer is no. They're saying we are not going to update the old stuff. And they're pitching it as you don't have to worry about your old stuff being changed underneath you. Okay, fair. But now you're also telling me I have to buy another book to have updated versions of those races and of those monsters, right? And is it a problem? It is a little, because it's like, is that just a fancy errata, right? Did they just basically errata all of the monsters from Volo's Guide and Mordenkainen's and you don't get the errata, right? And I guess not, but it's like, it's not new monsters. These are existing monsters. They're just new stat blocks for those monsters. Do I really have to buy a new book to get updated stat blocks for existing monsters, right? That feels a little money grubby too, right? And then the weirder thing, how is that going to be handled in D&D Beyond? Are you going to do a search for your Mind Flayer Lich and have two different versions in your listing? And you've got to go figure out which one is which, because it's probably not going to be clear. I don't think, I mean, like given its existing system, it's not going to be clear to me that you will know which one is which. And you have to go look and be like, which version of Orcus am I using? Am I using old Orcus or new Orcus, right? Am I using the old, Abjurer or the new Abjurer? And that's weird. And then it's like, well, what about adventures, old adventures that had monsters from Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes in it, or Volo's Guide to Monsters? And those adventures reference those monsters, but it's going to reference the old stat block, not the new stat block, unless you bought the Monsters of the Multiverse, in which case that would have a new stat block, right? That's really confusing. So I don't know how that's going to play out in the interface. Maybe they come up with something crafty, or you just say like which one you want. I'm recognize I'm going to have it, right? I forget what it's called. I have a subscription that gives me access to everything that comes out in D&D Beyond. So I'm going to get it. So I'll know, right? And I guess like if you were brand new coming in, but it's so complicated because it's like, so now if you buy, so Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes has a lot of interesting lore in it, right? It's got a lot of stuff in that book that beyond the monster stat blocks. And you can go buy that lore and you'd have those monsters, but you'll have the old stat blocks of those monsters, not the new ones. And if you want the new ones, you have to buy Monsters of the Multiverse 2 as well. That's just confusing, right? That just confuses me. So now, and then here's where things get really, you think that's complicated. Now let's talk about character races. So Monsters of the Multiverse has like 30 character races that have been picked up from a lot of material, including both Volo's Guide and Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes and Volo's Guide to Monsters. And those books are not going to be updated with the new race descriptions. You will only have those new race stat blocks. They're not stat blocks, right? Race mechanics. You only have those new race mechanics if you buy Monsters of the Multiverse. And then if you have both, now you're going to have two different versions of the same race for a character. And your players will have multiple versions of the same race. There'll be two different lizard folk, two different Yuan-ti, two different Kenkus, two different kobolds. And in many cases, the race descriptions are very different from one another. They have major abilities. And here's even... in many cases, they got nerfed. In many cases, abilities that the old ones had got nerfed, which means in some cases, you'll be buying an updated version of a race that's worse, depending on your point of view. The design is probably better, but that's worse than what was in the original one, right? That's so complicated to me. And I don't know. Like, so somebody said, like, why were you surprised? Well, I was surprised because it seems like the cleanest thing to do is to just update the old stuff with the new stuff. But I get that a bunch of people would be pissed off that they like their old stuff and they don't want the new stuff. And now their old stuff gets automatically updated. So the idea of we're not going to replace the old stuff, that makes sense from maybe customers are happier that they're not essentially losing what they had. I'm kind of in the point of view, like, I don't want to have to buy two copies of the Evoker. Right. And now I've got two Evokers, one old, one new, with the same name. Right. Like that. And then God help us when we say, like, oh, I'm sorry, you can only play the Tabaxi from Monsters of the Multiverse. You can't play the Tabaxi from Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. Oh, my God. Right. So headache. Yeah. Pixel Ruka says, simple way is to use new rules and the old rules only. Yeah, but I'm not sure that the system will let you be able to exclude new and old. One weird thing about D&D Beyond now is you can turn off source books for your players that are part of your campaign, but that doesn't turn off the options that they can pick when they are making characters and stuff like that. So will they see two Tabaxi? Will they see two Kenkus? Will they see two kobolds? I don't know. Now, maybe they come up with some crafty way to deal with that, right? We'll find out. And maybe they're going to, they got 5 months to figure this out. So maybe something will come along the line. Then the other one that cracked me up was when they said, we'll be following instruction from Wizards of the Coast on how to handle content, but I'm assured that they will make an announcement and then we'll take their lead on how to handle it. But one thing that cracked me up, Enworld, I think, had a really fun line here. While D&D Beyond is taking its lead from WOTC and what to do, apparently WOTC asked them to take charge of communicating this to all users. That is such like a fun passive aggression way of like WOTC is making D&D Beyond hold the bag for their choices, right? Which kind of cracks me up a little bit. It's like and it's not very un-WOTC like, because they've done this with Adventurers League for years. Right? For years, Adventurers League and the poor administrators for Adventurers League had to be the front people to communicate with and deal with the repercussions of really bonehead choices that were getting made internal to WOTC for Adventurers League, right? So it is not unlike Wizards to make big, lofty decisions that then other people have to communicate and suffer with. And this looks like that's what they're doing with D&D Beyond. And it sucks, right? Like, So D&D Beyond is going to have to deal with all of the people that are going to be pissed off one way or the other. My cats are fighting. What are you guys up to? I'm doing a show. Go fight somewhere else. Cats chasing each other around. So D&D Beyond is going to have to do whatever WOTC wants to do with the material that they're bringing in. But D&D Beyond's the one that's going to have to describe it to players and describe it to customers and deal with the repercussions of that, right? And this just gets into like, I think D&D Beyond made they have a raw deal with WOTC. It feels like it, right? They get to use the word D&D in their title. That's something that like Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds don't get to do. But Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds has way more freedom to do what they want to do than D&D Beyond seems to, mostly in the ability to incorporate third-party content. D&D Beyond can't include third-party content, and yet Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds both can. They have all the D&D stuff, plus they have all the third-party stuff. So, crazy, right? Yeah, they're Lando. Snark Knight says, they're Lando and WOTC is Vader. Pray I don't alter our deal further. That's pretty true, right? This deal's getting worse all the time. Pray I do not alter it further. Bequeath says, the paranoid side of my brain is saying this is an opening salvo for WOTC running their own D&D Beyond type product and being unhelpful to D&D Beyond. Possibly, that's a little conspiracy theory, but it's not out of hand, right? Like, does it help WOTC? Like, would WOTC sabotage D&D Beyond to boost their own thing? I don't think so. I think if they were going to do it, they just pull the license and say, new books are only going to be on our own thing. It also might be years before WOTC has something that they can actually put out. So I don't think they're bothering to like sabotage things now. Yeah. Simpler answer is incompetence. Yeah, right. I think it was Napoleon, right? So never attribute to enemy action, which can be further attributed to incompetence. And I think that's there. I don't think this is incompetent. I think they had to make a choice. And the choice is, do we update our old material or do we not? And then it seems like WOTC seems more interested in getting money these days. I don't know why. I wonder if sales are slumping. I don't have any indicator that says it is. But it's possible that, there says why we can sell two at twice the price, right? Why not do that? So that's what's going on with Monsters of the Multiverse for the release. Now, the other interesting thing that's going on, though, is Harbinger, Brandes Soddard, got a preview copy. He was one of at least two people I know. I think other people got it as well. So he was one of the people who got a preview copy of this expansion gift set. And he very graciously took lots of screenshots of stuff, including doing like side-by-side versions of various monsters. So here's the Drow Matron Mother from Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. Here is the Drow Matron Mother in Monsters of the Multiverse. You can see immediately that it's smaller, but then there's lots of different things. There's lots of different things there. He did this for lots of monsters. And what I recommend you do is you go to Brandes Soddard's page, and I guess you have to widen it out. I'll paste this in here. If you get a wide version, you can go to all of his images and then scroll through his images, right? So you don't have to scroll through. I guess if you go to media. Oh, because I'm not logged in. If you log in, you can scroll through all the images that he posted and see all of the shots that I'm about to show. For ease for the show, I stuck him into a big Notion thing. I am not going to pass this Notion page around though, because it contains all these images in it. But I took these right from Brandes Soddard's thing. Did he get sued? No, I don't think he got sued. They gave him a preview copy, right? They want him to show this stuff, right? This is how it goes. Newbie DM did the same thing. I think Enrique Bertrand on Newbie DM has a YouTube show where he went through page by page, went through a lot of it too. So no, I don't think there's any issues with this being seen or released because he got a preview copy so he could preview what was going on. So what are some of the interesting things to note here? There's a bunch of them, right? Bunch of monsters that we've got. And I don't think we're going to go in depth to all of them. But the main philosophy behind the design on this sort of thing was to make sure that monsters acted their challenge rating, even if you ran them in different ways or in suboptimal ways, right? A lot of the description from Jeremy Crawford was the description from Jeremy Crawford was you wanted to ensure that monsters, that you didn't have to play them optimally, that the monsters challenge rating often required that they were played a very particular way in a very particular circumstance. And that's why they were the challenge rating that they were. And they wanted to make sure that the monsters were more universal. They would still fight at that challenge rating. And you're going to see what that looks like. And the example of what that looks like is if you look at the demon staff here, right? Drow makes 2 demon staff attacks or 1 demon staff attack and 3 tentacle rod attacks, right? Demon staff attack is plus 10 to hit, 8 bludgeoning plus 14 psychic damage. So that's, math is hard, 22 points. And they succeed in DC 19 saving throw, become frightened of the Drow. So, that's a fair bit of damage, right? And that's 2 of those attacks. And then they can make a demon staff attack as a legendary action. So that's 5 attacks at 22 points of damage per attack. That's like 120. Is that right? 120 damage? Do I have that right? No, like 110 points of damage that it can do in 1 round, right? But it's challenge rating 20. So I still go like, is that enough? It does a lot of other things, but you can look at it like its basic attack does a fair bit of damage. And that's different than the original Drow Matron Mother. Then there's like weird stuff though. This is like the first one I saw and I was like the tentacle rod attack, right? And I guess what I hadn't seen originally was it makes 1 demon staff attack and 3 tentacle rod attacks, right? Tentacle rod plus 9 to hit, 1 creature, 3 bludgeoning damage. Not very much damage. If the target is hit 3 times with a rod on 1 turn, the target must succeed on a DC 15 Constitution saving throw or suffer the following effects for 1 minute. Speed is halved, disadvantage on dex saves, can't use reactions. Moreover, in each of its turns, it can take either an action or bonus, but not both. So essentially it's a slow, right? Essentially, if you hit it with a rod, it's a slow. It's the 3 bludgeoning damage that confuses me because that is very little damage, right? That's 9. So that replaces a damage that is 8 plus 14. What do you say? 22? I keep doing the same math over and again. 22. This takes 22 points and makes it 9. Why not throw some poison damage on there too, right? Just a couple D6 of poison. 3 plus 7 poison damage would make this 30, which is pretty good because you can't do it as a legendary. And has this kicker, right? So, yeah. Snark Knight says, man, that sounds like a long turn. Maybe, but it's a legendary monster, right? It's Drow Matron Mother is no joke. So stuff like that. Lots of condign. Oh, this is something that I thought was really good. I really liked is that a lot of monsters that summon things now can do it as a bonus action, which means they can do all the attacks. And by the way, a Glabrazo shows up, right? And now its challenge rating feels right because it's not the Matron Mother alone. It's a Matron Mother plus a Glabrazo or a Yoklol, right? Okay, now we got a serious thing. And now I feel like, so it's pretty good. The Tentacle Rod was a little weak, I felt like to me, but, easily fixed. And that was one of the reasons that I decided not to pre-order the book or that I canceled my pre-order. And it was because I'm going to modify these things anyway. I'm already modifying D&D monsters all the time in my head. I use the dials, right? I've got the Sly Flourish dials of monster difficulty and I'm tweaking those dials all the time. So if I'm already tweaking by adding poison damage to the Tentacle Rod, well, why am I buying a new one, right? I'll wait and I won't buy 3 books for 1. I'll wait until I can buy it normally, which I am going to do. I'm definitely going to buy it when it comes out normally. They packed up spells too. Orcus was one that I asked for. I asked Brandes, I said, can you show me Orcus, please? I really want to see Orcus. Let's pop this out so we can read it a little bit better. I really wanted to look at Orcus. And Orcus is pretty close to the same, other than he now has this necrotic bolts attack, right? which he can do 3 necrotic bolt attacks. He can make 3 Wand of Orcus, tail, or necrotic bolt attacks. He can beat the hell out of you with a tail, right? And the necrotic bolt is 15 to hit, 29 necrotic damage. All right. So he's got a nice ranged attack now. Other than that, a lot of his abilities are pretty much the same. And not, he's pretty solid. We talked about it in my Discord chat. The Wand of Orcus that hits from those 19, 24 bludgeoning plus 13 necrotic. All right, that's 37 points. So that's not nothing, right? That's a fair bit of damage. And he can hit you 3 times with it, right? But thematically, isn't it better if it hits you, you drop to 0 hit points, and maybe he only does 1 or 2 of them? What if he did 2 of those, right? Like, that would be scary. Now he's a CR 26, right? When he hits you, all your hit points go away, or something like that, right? It feels like, like the Wand of Orcus, one of the most powerful artifacts in the multiverse, does 13 necrotic damage, right? It's not quite as bad as the 3 cold damage darts, but it's a little low, but it's fine, right? It's an easier stat block. I can see it running. It's nice that he's got ranged attacks that he can hurl from far away. Right. And you'll notice that a lot of times the modifications of monsters are giving it a nice beefy ranged attack seems to be the common approach. Well, guess what? You can just do that, right? Here, I give you permission. From now on, add ranged attacks to your monsters. I'm going to have an article on Monday about this tomorrow. Tomorrow, there's going to be a Sly Flourish article about how to add necrotic damage to basically any undead monster, but you can really do it for any monster, which is like take whatever their melee attack is, reflavor a ranged attack that does similar damage. All done. What else? So that's Orcus. Zariel was pretty much the same. One interesting thing with Zariel is they got rid of her ranged attack. She used to be able to hurl these flame bolts that did like 36 fire damage, and she can't do that anymore. Why did they take her? Why did they take that away? And granted, she has teleport as a legendary, so she can move all over the place. But she doesn't have an attack action as a legendary action. So she can't teleport one round and then attack a next, which seems weak. I would probably give her a long, again, I'm going to make, and she's CR 26. These guys are huge. They should be pouring out damage. I've now tested a fair bit of high level stuff, and I can tell you, they should do that. Bale, CR 19, right? Bale is a pit fiend, right? A pit fiend with 189 hit points. Pit fiends have 289 hit points. They have way more, right? Now, granted, I think he's got regen 20. Okay, but if he takes cold or radiant damage, you don't. And so, I'd rather just have hit points, right, than regen. So again, it's like, well, I'll probably just change things up. Hellish Morningstar. Oh, this is an interesting thing they did as well. All of the demons, the big high-level monsters, they do force damage instead of bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing, which means it probably gets past your barbarian's rage, and it means it gets past any of the limitations on non-magic. You'll notice that they don't have the thing that says, their weapons count as magical attacks. They don't have that because it's there. So whatever. Is it a nerf? Demogorgon looked pretty good. Nice small stat block. Seemed pretty good. 28 damage, 28 force damage with a tentacle attack. 2 tentacle attacks can replace with the use of gaze. And the gazes are okay. They're all sort of denial. And players are going to hate him because he stuns or confuses, or charms. And those are all denial. And that kind of sucks. And he can hit with a tail for 31 points of damage. So he's pretty tough. I mean, CR 26, 464 hit points. Pretty beefy. I really like the Melidius. We were talking about this with some friends. I was talking about it with some friends. I did not like the Melidius that was in the original Tome of Foes. I don't remember what it was like, but I really like this one. It does a lot, and it's got like the equivalent of its Vorpal axe, right? 35 force damage, demon weapon attack, 1 snake bite attack, 1 wolf bite attack, right? 35 damage with the demonic weapon, 16 with the snake plus poison, 25 with the bite. That's a lot of damage. And it can make a demonic weapon attack as a legendary action. So it can hit you a lot. That's 4 of these, right? 21, fair bit of damage. And if it rolls a 20, it decapitates you and kills you. Why does this guy have that and Orcus doesn't, right? Why does the wand not say like on a 19 or 20, it drops you to 0 hit points? I don't know. An interesting thing is even though they went through this whole, like, we want to make sure to put all the stuff in the stat block that really goes, they still put spells like Lightning Bolt inside spellcasting. So a Melidius can still throw lightning bolts around. I don't know why. Not when I'm doing all this other stuff. So I don't know. But pretty cool. What else did I want to say about this guy? I think he's good. CR20. Oh, one thing is I was talking with a friend of mine who said, like, the art makes him look like a gnoll. right? He really doesn't look that, and he's huge, right? He should be much bigger. The picture should be far more scary than that. The picture's fine, but boy, give that dude some, bigger shoulders or something. Fire Elemental Myrmidon, I don't think changed very much. I don't know what that thing is. I'm skipping through some of these. I grabbed them. I want to see, I have a Black Abishai because I was curious about the Black Abishai. The Black Abishai was not changed. Then this was one that I was very curious about, which are NPCs, right? How are they handling NPCs? So here's an Evoker, for example. And a nice abbreviated, like that stat block is small, right? CR9, 121 hit points. That feels about right. Evoker makes 3 Arcane Burst attacks. Arcane Burst, 7 to hit. 25 force damage. So the Evoker is throwing 75 damage, right? That's a lot of damage for this guy to be doing a CR9, right? 7, you figure about 7 damage per challenge rating is like what the baseline is. But then you look at that. So here, this is interesting, right? Imagine the linear curve here, right? We're going to do some linear regression on today's episode of LazyDM, the LazyDM talk show. Linear regression time. And the linear regression tells us that if we look at challenge rating 9 and we see it is 75 points of damage. So that's what? 75 divided by 9, right? That's 8.3. So 8.3 damage per challenge rating for the Evoker Wizard with just his basic attack, their basic attack, right? Keep that in mind. Let's go back to our friend Orcus, right? Where's Orcus? Here's our friend Orcus. Let's open him up again, right? So Orcus is CR 26. So let's take that same 8.3, 26 times 8.3. 215 damage is how much damage Orcus should be doing per round to be doing an equal amount of damage as the Evoker. And I don't think he can get there, right? So like none of his abilities here do damage. He does 3 Wand of Orcus attacks, which is 24, that's 27, 37 times 3, right? 37 times 3. What I said, so 215 is what we're trying to get to. 37 times 3. 111 points on his turn, right? He's bonking you in the head with his thing. Then he can make 3 tail or necrotic bolt attacks. Let's pick whichever the higher. So the tail is 21 plus 9, right? So that's 30 times 3. 90. So what did we say? What's the total there? Somebody do the math for me. Basically, I think it's actually not terrible. It's pretty close, right? But it's still low. And he's CR 26. I would have it ramp up rather than tail off. But I guess it's actually pretty close. So I'm not going to complain too much. Does he quite get to Evoker level damage? And I don't know that he's quite there. So that's pretty cool. 25 points of damage, 3 Arcane Burst attacks, Sculpted Explosion. You can blow up an area. It's basically 40 damage, and then, and half damage on a success. It's a 20-foot radius, so it's fireball sized. Yeah, LARP strong. I was adding 3 wand and 3 tails. Yeah, if you add those together, what does it end up? And how close is it to the 8.3 times whatever? I was counting legendary actions as well, which is how you get to about 200 some. But that's a pretty good spell. So I like this guy a lot, right? The Evoker Wizard feels good. What's interesting, and I've talked about this before, what I find interesting is players can't learn Sculpted Explosion as a spell. It's not a spell, right? So you have an NPC wizard, Evoker. You have players who play Evoker Wizards, and they're not the same at all. Like, this guy has far fewer spells that he can cast than the player does, which is fine. But he has 2 abilities, Arcane Burst and Sculpted Explosion, which players cannot get. They don't count as spells. They can't be countered with Counterspell, right? And they're not in their spell book because they're not spells. That is really interesting. The other thing is, like, they don't have shield, right? Like, what wizard doesn't have shield? And this guy doesn't, right? Not only doesn't have shield, doesn't have a way to not to include it, right? So, Mage Hand, right? Ice Storm, Lightning Bolt. And then why are you putting Ice Storm and Lightning Bolt in the stat block when you have Sculpted Explosion, which is better, right? Like, it's weird, but okay. Like when you run it at the table, it probably runs fine. It's just this question of like, the Evoker Wizard can do an Acid Blast, right? Fire, cold, lightning, or thunder. So I guess like he could, and so you could say, well, he could do a cold version of a fireball that does 40 damage and does D8s instead of D6s. So, weird. But okay, but powerful wise good. And they're all sort of like this wise. But you can see many times what they did is they gave this thing, so Arcane Burst, right? Arcane Burst, +7 to hit, 20 points of radiant damage. Arcane Burst, +6 to hit, 19 points of psychic damage. It's the same ability name. Arcane Burst here, Arcane. That's confusing, isn't it? So you have an ability that two different creatures have, similar, Divine Wizard and Enchanter Wizard. They both have the same ability name, but they do different things. Their attack bonus is different and the damage is different. That's interesting. I guess it's because Arcane Burst is sort of like having an attack. It's sort of like saying longsword attack, which could be very different between different creatures. So somebody asked about the Conjurer. There is a Conjurer, which can summon an elemental as a bonus action. I mean, elementals are CR5. So you have a CR6 guy bringing in a CR5 guy as a bonus action. That's meaty, right? G Blaster says that's OP. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, hard to say because it doesn't have shield. So you're going to take it down quick. Why don't they have Misty Step? The benign transportation teleports along with equipment is running 30 feet to an unoccupied square. It could do as a bonus action. If instead chooses space within range, willing small, they can both teleport swapping places. So it says, why not Misty Step? This one has a fake Misty Step, a different Misty Step, right? Which is weird. And then Fireball is in the Conjuration Spellcaster's ability. So it can still do a damage spell. What's up with that, right? Necromancer is interesting. Summons undead. It can summon 5 zombies or skeletons as a bonus action. That's pretty cool. All right, I'll do so once a day. Again, Arcane Bursts, +7, 25 necrotic damage. So they did these and think about you can basically take the formula for this Arcane Burst thing and just add it to any monster, any spellcaster you want, right? And if you want to do a Mordenkainen or a Monsters of the Multiverse kind of monster, you just add that on there. So interesting stuff. I think I have Bale in here twice. Oh yeah, it looks like I repeated some dudes. Anybody else that we wanted to look at? Warlords. So my favorite, the Winter Eladrin, right? I had to give crap to Jeremy Crawford when I was talking to him on a show I did a long time ago about the sad bow of the Winter Eladrin. And now it's not a sad bow anymore, right? 7 + 13 cold damage. Yeah, you added cold damage to the necrotic to the thing. I'm gonna make 2 of those, so it's doing a fair bit. CR10, that's fine. Phase Step, sure. Frigid Rebuke, fine. So Winter Eladrin's better. I'll give it that definitely works. Oh, here's one I really liked. I'm going to end on a high note, which is the Deathlocks. I really did not like the Deathlocks that were in Mordenkainen's, right? Deathlocks are like undead spellcasters, low-level undead spellcasters, sort of Lich Light. And I like those. I want undead spellcasters. They're pretty cool. But they were warlocks, and they had a bunch of warlock abilities that, I didn't know how I was going to run that in a game. And now they're nice and clean, right? Now it's I've got my Deathlock, 2 Deathly Claw, Grave Bolt, Deathly Claws, 9 necrotic, Grave Bolt, +5 to hit, 14 necrotic, 28 necrotic damage at CR4. What's that? 28 divided by 4. Okay, that's perfect, right? CR, that's 7 damage per CR. Right, that fits really nicely, and it's got some other spells it can do, like invisibility and spider climb and hunger of Hadar and whatever, dispel magic. So it's got some stuff out, but I like that now it's got a nice clean. If you're going to use a bunch of great Deathlocks, right? If you're going to have 5 Deathlocks, they're easy to fire, right? They're easy to work. So I like that stuff. I don't know why there's a Deathlock at CR4 and a Deathlock White. I don't know why we have 2. Because they're both almost immediately the same CR. They both have this Grave Bolt attack. This one does less, but it's a lower CR, so it should, right? This does 24 points. 24 divided by 3, 8. So it's the Deathlock White actually hits a little harder for its challenge rating. And it's got life drain. So I guess because it's a white, but the stat blocks are so similar. I don't get it. And then you have a Mastermind, right? And the Mastermind is a bigger dude, CR8, 110. I like this, right? Really good. Turn resistance. 2 Deathly Claw, Grave Bolt, but their Grave Bolts do 6, only 2, 13 necrotic damage. If it's large, succeeding on a saving throw, become restrained by shadowy tendril wrapped around it. So it does restraining and it's it, but it only does 26. Is that's way low, right? Right, 26 divided by 8. That's 3.25. Why is it doing so little? Am I missing something? Somebody help me out here. What am I missing? And it doesn't have a lot of crazy good spells. Let's end on a high note. Yeah, I thought. Well, I really like these guys. So the Deathlock Mastermind is, because of the control, right? It can hit 2 guys and restrain them with strength saving throws, and then other people can beat the crap out of them. I don't think that makes up for the fact that it does so little damage. And if it were me, we would do 8 times 7 divided by 2. I do 18 points of damage on those attacks instead of 13, right? Is that right? Oh, no, because it only does 2. 28 points, right? So I do 68 would be better. Double that, right? Double the amount of damage that they're doing there. And you're pretty good. 68 or 86 would be good on each of those because it's a little low. So, and that's my point, right? I look at these and I'm going to have to tweet. I like the Deathlock. The Deathlock's great. Deathlock White is okay, but I don't know why I have both. And the Deathlock Mastermind does too little damage. So, or for me, right? And this is all, keep in mind, all of this, everything I've just been complaining about for the last, 35 minutes, ending on 1/3 of a high note. There you go. 1/3. I really like this guy. Deathlock is really cool. This is just my opinion, man. This is just like my opinion, right? Like everybody's got different things that they want from monsters. And this is kind of more to the point, which is like, we're going to be swimming in monsters here pretty soon. We're going to have Monsters of the Multiverse, which has 300 some monsters. My understanding is MCDM, Matt Colville's company, is coming out with a Kickstarter for a new monster book soon, right? And they've been testing the hell out of monsters. We have Toma Beast 3, the fourth monster book coming out for Kobold Press. And then a whole ton of monster books that already exist. We have tons of monsters coming in, right? Tons of them coming in from all kinds of different places. Tons of monsters coming in from all sorts of different places. And all of them with different design philosophies, which is really interesting, right? Sometimes more complicated. One thing I've seen a lot from third-party publishers, not so much Kobold Press, I have seen it with MCDM's monsters, and I'm seeing it with the Level Up 5e Monsters Menagerie, which I'm probably going to do a full review of next week, which I think I have. Let's see. Let's take a look. Yeah, here's an example of the Lich, right, from the Monsters Menagerie. And it's a good solid monster, but look, it's 2 pages long. That's a big stat block, right? And granted, it's a Lich. It's like as powerful, it's as strong a monster as you can get. I'm going to take a deeper look at this. But one thing that I think is pretty clear to me about the design philosophy of the Monsters Menagerie, the Level Up 5e Monsters Menagerie, is if you want deeper, richer, more tactically relevant monsters with lots of different options, here's your go-to. What I respect about the way Wizards is going is they say, we want to keep monsters simple and straightforward and easy to use and still have them attack at their challenge rating. The only problem is I don't think they all do. Right? I don't think they all meet that. I don't think they meet that goal. So LARP Strong says MCDM does a butt ton of playtesting. Does Kobold Press. I know Kobold Press playtests. I don't know how extensive. And when you have 300 monsters, I don't know how well tested all of them are. I know MCDM does. They have a full-time playtest coordinator on staff. That their whole job is playtest coordinating. And they have a huge amount of people that do that playtesting. So they got lots and lots of stuff. So I'm really excited about MCDMs. But it would not surprise me, knowing Matt Colville's desires and designs for 5e, that they'll be pretty crunchy too, right? So if you want monsters with lots of stuff, that's great. I kind of want simpler things, right? And I like the simplicity of Monsters of the Multiverse. I wish the math held up a little bit better. So anyway, that's our monster talk for today. Let's do some Patreon questions. Oh, I have 10 minutes left. Man, I burned the day talking about monsters. So let's do some Patreon questions. Try to hammer through a few of these. Josh G from Patreon says, there's a lot of good advice out there about running successful scenes or encounters, but I have more trouble with the transitions between scenes. There are a lot of good advice out there about running successful scenes or encounters, but I have more trouble with the transition between scenes. How do we find the right resolution for transitions for them to feel natural? Narrating a whole transition from scene to scene can sometimes feel a bit abrupt and rob the game of potential gameplay. But allowing the characters to enact with each tiny step on the way can bog things down. It's a good question. And I hate to say it. I hate to just be flippant. It's the kind of thing you got to get a feel for, right? This gets into the whole concept of pacing in games. And this Monty Cook from former D&D designer Monty Cook and now owner of Monty Cook MCG, Monty Cook Games, right? Creator of Numenera, talks about the importance of pacing in RPGs as maybe the most important skill you can have as a GM and as a DM. And part of that is knowing when to let things take some time and when to speed things up. When is it getting tiring and when is it time to increase it? This is a little bit about beats, right? But this isn't just about beats. This is about, time frames, stretching and condensing time frame stuff. And the hard part is your player, the easy way is to say, well, are your players engaged? If they are, then the time is right. If they are bored, then you need to condense things. If they are too stressed out and too frantic and they feel they keep saying like, wait a minute, I want to do this other thing, that you want to stretch things out. But what if you have players that want different things, and some players are bored off their mind and other players think it's not long enough, right? Well, that's where you got to really balance things, and that's hard. One thing I would advise, and I've talked about this before a lot, and I did a video on this recently, is the idea of thinking, instead of, and this is just, again, my thought on it, is I try to think less about blocking scenes, right? Instead of saying like scene, I just look at the whole situation, right? And one scene flows right into the next. I don't really have like a block between one scene and another. There's not a big cut. Sometimes there is, right? And sometimes it's like a travel montage or whatever. But a lot of the times I'm just letting the story play out, and then I will stretch it or condense it as I need in order to and part of it is like, how do I feel? Am I bored? If I'm bored, I'm going to speed things up. If I'm excited and I think, then I might stretch things out. And hopefully my pacing is desirable to the players as well. But yeah, that idea of thinking less about trying to block things into encounters and into scenes and more about stretching them out, I think can make a big difference. So that's my thought. Wayne S., I would like to see some discussion about how you would build the World Without Heroes teaser you posted. How would you combine the various published modules? So on Sly Flourish, I wrote an article called A World Without Heroes. It is a 1 to 20 campaign outline. And the theory of it was, imagine that all of the scenarios that are in the hardcover adventures that Wizards has published all happened. And the players weren't there. The characters weren't there to stop it. So Tiamat rises, right? The cult of Tiamat rises Tiamat up. The demon lords are ruling the Underdark because nobody stopped them. The elemental evil cults fought each other to death, but now one cult remains, and we're going to say it was the cult of Eternal Flame that won. And now Imix is sitting on a molten throne in the middle of the Desserin Valley. Acererak birthed his, by the way, this is spoiling every one of the adventures, by the way, sorry. Acererak birthed a dark god down in Chult, and that god is now just feeding on the life of everything around it. And there's now a big hellhole where Elturel was, and now Baldur's Gate is on the way. Maybe even Baldur's Gate is gone, but Baldur's Gate is now ruled over by devils or their thralls. And the Frost Maiden has completely taken over and frozen everything in the north and is working her way south. So imagine all of those things happened. And now you have this like Armageddon world with all of these different things, and the characters are involved. And it's like, how do you fix this mess, right? So the question was, how would you do it? So I don't want to say like read the article, but like, my big thing is like, you decide first. And probably what I would do is during a session 0, I would say, tell the players what's going on, right? All of these things are like the truths that they already know have happened because they have happened. And then figure out where they're going to start, right? Figure out which one of these places they want to start in. Mirabar, Waterdeep, Baldur's Gate, Nyanzaru, Blingdenstone. And then build adventures from there that are sort of built out of those things that happened, right? And so depending on which location they choose is which one of those major fronts they're going to start facing right away. If they're in Waterdeep, they're going to have to deal with like Tiamat, right? Because her ziggurat is floating right above the city, and now it's filled with cultists of the dragon, right? All of the masked lords are actually dragon cultists, right? So, and then just build it out from there. But the idea for this seed is not to give you the full campaign. It's to give you ideas, and then you build your adventure from there. I don't think I'm answering your question, but the way I wouldn't combine the adventures. I would just use material that are in those adventures to come up with my own campaign based on the idea of what if those adventures had all occurred. So Wayne, I hope that helps answer your question a little bit. William D., do you use callbacks in your games like they do in movies and books? If so, what are some good ways to build in callbacks that are memorable? Something I'm guilty of is turning a random NPC that might be mistreated by the players into a bad guy later on, not the big bad. So I'm not sure that I understand what a callback is in this question. And I might be misinterpreting and saying flashback. If you mean callback as in like bringing something that happened in a previous game into the game now, I think those are great, right? And your idea of like NPCs that were mistreated by the players come back as a villain, I don't know why that's wrong, right? I think that's cool. Think about Captain America Civil War, right? And one of the things I love about Civil War is that the main villain is just a normal dude, right? He's a normal dude that had something terrible happen to him because of, and he blames the Avengers for it. And he's figuring out how to deconstruct the Avengers, right? And how would a guy with no superpowers take down the Avengers, right? That is a really cool, that is a really cool idea. And the idea of like an NPC that the character's treated badly, who then says like, I'm going to take, and one of the campaigns I always wanted to do is like, imagine you had a demon prince, an ancient dragon, a lich, and somebody else that had all been sort of awakened and set upon the world by like a commoner, right? The commoner figured out how to work these groups just because he wanted to, right? So I think that's really cool. I think callbacks are great, and players love callbacks. They love to hear about NPCs that they've seen before. Good ways to build them in. I mean, keeping track of the NPCs is a great way to do it, right? If you can take a look at your NPCs and review them and say, are there any NPCs I want to bring back, right? Remembering which NPCs the characters cared about, the players cared about. I think it'd be good. Everyone brings up Thumper. Everyone remembers Thumper. So yeah, so I think it's a great idea. And I think the best way to do it is like keep, you'll notice I don't have a database for secrets, right? I only have the 10 secrets for any game, and I come up with the 10 new ones. And I get people all the time to talk to me about, I like to keep track of all my secrets and a big thing. Okay. I mean, if it works for you, great. I find that I really need to like flush the cache every week and come up with new secrets. Although you've seen me cheat on that, but I don't have like a big database. I'll have 300 secrets, and with 72 of them checked off and 192 that I have not. So, but I do keep track of NPCs, right? I have a big NPC section that has a list of all NPCs. I find that really useful, and that's because I can use that to do the callbacks that you're talking about. Paul B. Says, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the benefits and problems associated with D&D Canon. When does it help and why, and where is it problematic? I've heard your thoughts across multiple streams on D&D being our game, but I wonder if there's a way to pull all those points together that might be a reference point for the community. Yeah, so Canon serves, Canon is good and bad, right? Canon is great for establishing a baseline that the players and the DM all recognize and understand, and might recognize and understand pretty thoroughly before you run a game. If you have players who know about the Forgotten Realms and you're running a game in the Forgotten Realms, you don't have to explain a lot of stuff about the Forgotten Realms. You can talk about Waterdeep and everyone knows what you're talking about. You can talk about Baldur's Gate and everyone knows what you're talking about, right? That really helps. And setting that baseline expectation is really good. If you happen to be playing an organized play, that helps too, because now your canon is a set baseline that helps you go from game to game and still have a set world that you're able to kind of like live in and that your character live in. So that works really well. Canon can be problematic if the players are hanging on to parts of it too tightly that the DM doesn't want to go with. And this could be like, if you have an ancient civil, let's say you do a big Netherese thing, and you as the DM have ideas about the Netherese that doesn't fit the storyline that about the Netherese in other books, and the players have read that and they know it, and they're like, why are your Netherese different than the actual Netherese, right? That can cause problems. A lot of times I've heard DMs who have trouble when their players know more about the world than they do. And there's ways to deal with that, but it is a hard situation, right? The ways to deal with it is to try to bring them in and let them help you make the world real, because they've got knowledge that can help you. It's sort of that expanding beyond their character and talking about the world. Ask them about the Netherese, right? A trick you can pull is when they say, oh, that sounds like the Netherese. And you say, what do you know about the Netherese? And they might say, well, as a player, I know something, but as a character, I might not know it. And I said, well, as a player, go ahead and describe as a player what you know, and we'll come up with a reason why your character knows this, right? And let the player, and then you learn what the player knows. And now you know, and then you can use that to inform your stuff, right? So there's tricky bits with that, but there are ways to deal with it. I'm lucky that generally speaking, my players know a lot about the Forgotten Realms. Occasionally, I've definitely had players who know more about it than I do. I'm sure I do. Man, they're just nice. My players probably know way more about it than I do, and they're just nice, and they don't hurt me or yell at me when I stray from canon. But then the other thing is, once it hits your table, now it's your canon. So like the events that have happened in previous hardcover adventures in my version of the Forgotten Realms are my canon, my table's canon. And if I have something that shows up, the events from Tyranny of Dragons took place already. The events from Frostmaiden took place. The events from Descent in Avernus have taken place. All of that stuff has taken place, so that when new people come in, I have my version of the realms that has been modified by all of the groups and all of the different campaigns that I've run in previous sessions. So So it's the main thing is that Canon is really good to give a baseline expectation for everybody at the table where you don't have to explain a lot of stuff. And the bad thing is that some players might be hanging on to parts of it that aren't Canon in your game. I hope that explains your question. Azid Lord says, do you have places where to get bite-sized lore or inspiration for D&D sessions? Something like one paragraph or page for a fantastic locale, monument, quest hook, NPC, or other stuff you want to use. The tables on your website and in your books are already a great resource, but what if I want more? Have I told you about a fine book known as the LazyDM's Companion? You already mentioned my books, but I'm just in case you are not aware of this one. This one answers all that stuff that you mentioned. Lots and lots and lots of generators for building out, for choosing that kind of stuff. So my first recommendation is check out the LazyDM's Companion. But you say that, what if you want more than my books? What else do you have? There's a couple of things. One is I really like to get it from source material, the campaign material. I think that the Sword Coast Adventurers Guide is a highly underrated book. I don't think people really understand what it is. The Sword Coast Adventurers Guide is a player book. It is a book for players that lets them dive in. We were just talking about Canon. It's a great way for them to understand what the Forgotten Realms is like, because everything that's written in that book is player-centric. It's not filled with spoilers, right? But it's also a great DM book because it's got lots of what you're talking about, bite-sized bits of lore that you can read about places, right? And read about like the Warlock's Crypt, right? The Warlock's Crypt on the Sword Coast, really evocative location. One paragraph of text, really evocative location, right? The Eberron source book, fantastic place if you're going to run an Eberron. This is one of the advantages of running in a published campaign setting is if you want bite-sized lore and inspiration, there's tons of it if you're willing to play in a published campaign setting, right? Midgard, Tolis. There's fantastic campaign source books out there that you can siphon for lots of bite-sized lore and inspiration, which you don't have if you're running your own campaign world, which is most people, about half, right? If you're running your own campaign world, you can still steal that stuff if you're willing to, right? There's a bit of the not invented here problem, like, I like that, but I didn't come up with that, so it's not real, right? You can still steal stuff and drop it right into your game when you like it. So one of the advantages of campaign worlds, like Wildmount, right? The new Tal'Darai book I just ordered a couple days ago, right? Like even if I don't plan on playing in those worlds, I bet I can take a lot of stuff from it, and I bet I can get a lot of inspiration for things I haven't put in my game. So my other than the LazyDM's Companion, right, which is my book, and you said you want more beyond my book, I would go for campaign source books. I think they're great sources of inspiration. My friends, that is it for today's Lazy D&D Talk Show. I want to thank you all much for hanging out with me today. If you enjoyed this show, you can help me out by subscribing to the Sly Flourish newsletter, supporting me directly on Patreon, picking up any of my books, or subscribing to my videos on YouTube. For those on Twitch, please hang around. We are going to talk about Blades in the Dark in just a few minutes here. For the rest, thank you very much. Have a great day, and get out there and play some D&D.